right, 10-4.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Eastern Current. I do not have a beard anymore, to be completely honest with you. I've been on a strict diet, lost a good bit of weight, and I was like, I'm going to shave my beard off and see if I lost my face fat. And I didn't lose my face fat, so the beard's coming back pretty quick, as quickly as it can grow back. But this is me without a beard. Everyone's been a little shook, so I'm just saying it is me. No one's hacked the podcast. But yeah, thank y'all for tuning in. We're super stoked about this episode. We've got awesome guy on from Texas again, another Texas guy, which I've learned so much from everyone we have on from Texas because our fishing styles are so different. A lot of people are like, let's talk about our specific area. And yeah, it does help to talk about like Wilmington, North Carolina, or, Corpus Christi, Texas, if you live there. But also learning from other regions and other fisheries is crucial. And it's what pushes you and makes you a better angler. So I urge you, if you're not from Texas, to still check this podcast out because there is a lot that you can learn from it. We actually have quite a few listeners from Texas, so if you are listening from Texas, thank you for tuning in. Before we get rolling, be sure to check out Eastern Current Fishing on Facebook. Just a great place to connect with other listeners. We have a Patreon page with lots of extra content. We're actually going to be hopping on there at the end of this podcast and recording some Patreon content as well. You get early access on Patreon to all of our episodes, all of our other videos are uploaded to Patreon immediately, and it's like $5 a month, which is the cost of one cup of coffee a month, and we really appreciate all the support over there. And go check out our Instagram page, Eastern Current on Instagram, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you listen just on the podcast platforms, definitely check out watching it. I've a lot of my podcasts that I like to listen to. I've really started to like watching the video part of it because it feels like you're hanging out, like you're more part of the conversation. So check out the stuff on YouTube. We got a bunch of fishing videos over there as well. But yeah, so we're going to talk with Dustin Nichols. What's up, man?
Oh, what's going on today, man? It's trying to thaw out over here in this weather we got going on.
I know, man. I guess some people aren't as connected with other fishermen from Texas. I brought it up with a couple people lately. I'm like, do you hear about what's going on in Texas? And they're like, no. I'm like, dude, it's like devastating over there. But
yes, crazy 30-40 year storm.
Yeah.
We had ice and snow, sleet. It was still some frozen precipitation this morning. We only had expected to see a high of around 31 today. We had lows in the teens the past couple nights before, so it's definitely affecting our fishery. So I'm just from when I can get a signal, our cell signal hadn't been the best, and we're having rolling blackouts with the power. So we're having to deal being without power. So we have a generator on standby just to jump, run the refrigerators and everything and all that good stuff. But you're seeing some stuff on social media that's pretty heartbreaking from some of the fisheries and stuff. It definitely is.
You were saying pre-show that there's been some fish kills, but pretty localized so far, at least is what it seems.
That's what it seems like. I know some of my local waters I fish around the Port O'Connor, if you're familiar, around there. That's a pretty cool little fishing town here that's still kind of a small scale.
Yeah.
It can get crowded in summer, but there's some areas there that are known for some bigger trout populations and some good sized fish. And if the fish didn't get out of the back lakes and areas, then they suffered. There's a lot of stunned fish. I've seen some videos from that area down there around Pringle and stuff. If you're not familiar with it, but there's usually some good fish in there this time of year as it starts to wane. When we had preceding this front, we had the water temp warm back up into the low 60s up to mid 60s. So it was the fish didn't get out. We did have a gradual cool off before the major two fronts hit. So hopefully some of the fish got deep. But what we're seeing is some localized kills and stuff around Rockport. Matagorda areas, Port Isabel, a lot of our snook and tarpon population that had been moving northward with the tropical temperature trends we've had over the mild winters over the past few years. So you're seeing some dead snook and tarpon also, which is juvenile tarpon, which is pretty saddening.
Yeah,
to see
tough,
that.
Man.
And mangrove snappers and all that have all moved up this way, up towards Galveston, even up towards Calcasieu and all that in Louisiana. So I haven't heard any reports from up there, Galveston, anything too bad, or Sabine or any of that. But I know there's some pictures floating around of some bayou areas in Matagorda Bay that were frozen. I've seen some pictures of Port O'Connor, the bay side of the Intracoastal where the little jetties come out. It's frozen over. Fort Lavaca area I fish a lot. Had some ice on the shallows and stuff, so it's pretty crazy.
It is crazy, man. We had, I guess it was 4 years ago now, was our last big freeze, and it crushed our trout and redfish. That's the thing, is those quick drops, those quick temperature changes is what gets them. Even today on my charter, we were in an area that had a bunch of trout in the creek leading in, and then some redfish back in the back. And so we went in, and there was dolphins waiting to get across the sandbar to where the trout hang out. And because they get so cold, and they just sit there, and the dolphins crush them this time of year. And so I got up on plane, jack plated up, and like circled the dolphins and pushed them all the way out the creek, idling behind them, and they were like running away from my boat. I was like, "You're not," because there's some big trout in this one creek that the water's super clear right now, you can see them. And so we go back through, and I was like, I'm not even going to mess with the trout. I'm just going to go to the redfish because the dolphins were harassing them. I just did donuts on my boat there to run the dolphins off. And we get back in there and are fish for the redfish for like 10 minutes, and I hear and look back, and the dolphins are like throwing trout up on the bank behind me, eating them. I was like, all right, I tried. So
I tried to help them out.
I tried to help them out. Do y'all see that as much of an issue down there when it gets cold? The dolphins really taking advantage of the trout?
Yeah, they take advantage of them all year, pretty much
that's
every year. There's an area I fished outside of Indianola, the Powderhorn area, shoreline over there, and there's an old Nard one that it shows up every year. It's got like barnacles on its dorsal fin and stuff. And I'm telling you, it doesn't try to harass the fish, but it sits there and waits for you to catch them ones that are kind of jacked up. Might hook them a little deeper, something a little slower to swim away when you try to release them, and he'll sit there and take them.
Really?
I've seen it more than a few seasons, more than a few times April, May in the same area, same dorsal. You can see he's got barnacles on this thing. I mean, it's the craziest thing. And then you see him up in some of the areas you wouldn't expect them to see. Some of the back lakes and stuff, you'll see them in there pushing redfish around and stuff sometimes. And it's just like, like, here they come. They're going to ruin it today.
Yeah, I know.
Some of them will ruin it for you, if you don't shoo them out of there or try to move them. And I'm out. I fish strictly out of a kayak, so.
When they jack you up, it's a little more painful because it's not like you can just get up on plane and run away from them.
I can move a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
The electric motor does come in handy here sometimes. So, we can move around a little bit and kind of move around in the areas and try to get back away from them sometimes. But, they can be a nuisance at times. But, hey, they're trying to eat too. They're part of the balance of the ecosystem we have in the fisheries also. So it's kind of
for sure
kind of a love-hate relationship with them.
I know. The way I look at it here, and I want to get your backstory too. This is the last thing I'll say about this. I don't want to hear your backstory. But it's like we deplete our resource commercially so badly already that the dolphins are now an issue for the simple fact of we personally have taken too many fish away. So then the dolphins this time of year are hurting it too. I mean, the dolphins they're not going to sit there and eat 100 trout in a day. But still, it's like I'm like, God, I need to do everything I can to help these fish survive. But take us through your backstory, where you grew up, how you got into fishing, and kind of where it's brought you and where you hope it takes you.
Well, dude, man, I grew up and born in southeast Georgia in the Golden Isles, Brunswick, St. Simon's Island.
That's a killer fishery there too,
dude. It's killer. I mean, I grew up there with my dad, my grandpa. My granddad was the fire chief of the town in Brunswick for 26 years. And he loved to fish. He had multiple bass over 10 pounds in some neighborhood ponds, and I was stoked to learn all that myself.
Yeah.
We fished the inshore fisheries there, and it was just totally different back then. They were throwing the Peerless 9s, the 209 pin reels with the big 9-foot rods, and the Dacron with the line dressing and the big thick floats, and adjusting your depth to because the tidal movement over there is so much more than over here. So, I mean, think about that, and being me, I was chasing the neighborhood ponds, and I would go out there with my bass gear and like the man stingray grubs back in the day, those red and white ones, and I'd spank them because they were sitting there hauling that big. I was just throwing, and I mean, I would take some of my bass lures too back then and use them and catch trout. Like,
that's awesome.
And they'd always get mad at me, but yeah, I grew up over there. The fish is totally different than what I'm where
like
I'm at
8
now.
foot tide swings to like, what do you have now tide wise?
2 foot and a half. But yeah, I'm in Texas now. I did, almost 5 years in the Marine Corps. Moved back home from California and Hawaii, so I didn't fish as much over there. I grew up in more of, I fished my whole life, but I was kind of in the skateboard and surfing industry for a while, which is totally, you're a waterman, so you're always around water too when you're surfing.
Right,
so the fishing had always stuck with me. But I moved to Texas in '96, and, that just opened doors to like, man, there's people over here walking around fishing. There's a big wade fish, deal over here where we have, those shallow flats and grass flats, sandbox and all that, and you can get out and wade in. And that opened up the door just fishing. Before I would go surf, I would, go catch a few fish here and there, and stuff like that at walking spots. And then the kayaking thing the craze started going. I think I've been in a kayak for about 8 or 9 years now. And it's just opened up that much more area and so much more you can get back into places that boats can't, which is really cool. And the ease of access where you can launch, any easement that you can get to the water or bridge, you can slide down and jump in. It's just, it's easy.
Yeah, that's super cool.
It just kind of went from there. And then I'm in Victoria. It's called the Crossroads. I'm about an hour and a half from everywhere. Austin, Houston, San Antonio, Corpus Christi. I can be at the water in about 28 minutes, but where I work, I can launch in within 5 minutes of where I work.
Wow.
I'm a process operations operator at a petrochemical plant. And I'm right there in Point Comfort, Texas. So I'm Lavaca Bay area. I fish a lot of that over there, which is some pretty good redfish and some trout haunts over there I can get into. But I'm real close to Port O'Connor, so I get over there too.
Nice.
A lot. But this area is just, I can drive 2 hours and be down to Port Mansfield in about 2.5, 3 hours. Be at Rockport in 40 minutes. Be at Matagorda in 35, 40 minutes. Matagorda Bay areas and everything. So I'm around some great fisheries here, which is awesome.
Yeah, man. Texas is one of those places that I've fished a bunch, and this isn't me like being like, oh, I fished over, but I fished a bunch in Florida. I fished in Georgia and South Carolina a good bit, and I fished Texas. I fished Galveston Bay one day with a friend while I used to live down in Louisiana in the winters and fish.
Yes.
And I used to not give a rip about trout. I used to not care at all about. I like catching trout, but like. Then I got cursed with the whole big trout bug and like trying to catch bigger fish and like it's not about catching a bunch of them, it's about catching some quality ones. And now all I want to do, like if I were to spend money on a fishing trip somewhere right now, it would be to go target big trout. But what was I going to say? Oh, to kind of tell people, because you're very involved in the fishing community there, involved in the fishing industry. Kind of take people through where you're at and tell people about your podcast, because I will link link your podcast in the show notes.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to come on up in the kayak side of things. I started off as just a regional team member with Jackson Kayak and worked my way up to the national team, and now I'm on factory level, and I run their team in the South region of the states. I'm the team manager here for them, and also I travel and fish bass tournaments. I do saltwater tournaments. I do whatever I can, but the kayaking as a whole is just, this past year just went through the roof. Nobody can keep up with demand. The supply is just catching up to everything from last year with COVID and how everything worked out. But I just love being on the water, period. I'm
the same
so it just kind of transferred into this. I got on this team, and then part of that was writing articles, and I was like, man, I never liked to write in high school. And my senior year English lit teacher comments on some of my posts, and she's like, it's crazy how when you write about something you love, how much you enjoy. And I was like, yeah, I would have never thought in a million years I'd be writing stuff in a magazine. So I write for a Texas magazine, Saltwater Angler. It's a free publication. This distributed through ads and stuff that are placed, but there's captains from all over the coast here in Texas and Louisiana that write, and it's distributed through over 900 locations. You can check that one out online. It's www.saltyangler.com. I write in there when I get a chance to throw something together. I'm gonna throw something together today about this little Arctic blast we've had here and how it's going to affect me for a little while. Hopefully not too bad, but I'm fortunate to have support for some great companies and been able to enjoy the events. The main thing is the camaraderie of our industry. If y'all aren't familiar with the kayak side of things, a lot of our tournaments are based on CPR, which is catch, photo, release. Mm-hmm. We can't throw 5 bass in the live well on your kayak. Now, even though some of our redfish events here are, you bring 2 live redfish to the weigh-in, but we have live wells rigged up on our kayaks for redfish now.
Wow!
And we have a O2 circulation. That we did fish a trout tournament about a month and a half ago. Me and 3 other solid anglers here on our kayaks. They let us fish against the boats, and it was a live weigh-in, 4 biggest trout. And we brought all our fish in alive, and they were all released, and we ended up in 3rd place out of like 54 teams.
Wow, well, that's awesome.
Which was ruffling some feathers pretty good, but it's just, I like the whole conservation side of the CPR, and that's basically where it started, was from the bass fishing side of things.
Yeah.
Chad Hoover from Kayak Bass Fishing, that's KBF, started the whole deal with the measuring and the taking a photo and submitting. There's like a tournament management systems that you download the app on your phone. There's Tourney X and there's Fishing Chaos and so on and so forth. That's how you host your tournaments, and you get a unique identifier that you place on your measuring stick that are certain measuring boards are approved by the tournaments, and then you take a photo of the fish and you submit it, and then it auto calls your small fish and everything like that. You have month-long challenges. You have 1-day tournaments or 2-day tournaments or live tournaments for that matter.
Right.
But that's the whole deal with the way the pandemic had been going on, that, everybody was going to these virtual tournaments and have a virtual captain's meeting on Facebook, and everybody watch cap meetings. You go out and fish, your 8 hours, and you submit all your fish, and then you pay out through PayPal, and you're still fishing tournaments without having that big group.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
That's the main thing that drew me into the kayak fishing world really quickly. Besides me just love being on the water, was the camaraderie of everybody coming together.
Definitely.
There's very seldom some drama. There's some here and there, but it's not. But then, the stealth approach of that thing is what's really led me in the direction of, this time of year here from October, November into March, April was when I really kind of focused on chasing the bigger trout. And that's what really led me onto that kayak and chasing big trout, was the stealth approach of it. So, it's just, I can ramble on and on about it.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about having you on for a podcast, man. If you love talking about fishing, you're in the right spot. But tell people before we get into it too much about your podcast.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm part of a big network it's called Paddle and Fin Network. It's a podcast network, and my segment is called Chasing the Tide. It's a saltwater kayak fishing segment there on the Paddle and Fin Network. We're all across all podcast platforms. We use Anchor.com helps distribute us through everything, so you can look up on Podbean, Castbox, Google, iHeartRadio, Spotify, whatever, Apple Podcasts, all that. We should be there. Just look up Paddle and Fin, and then all our episodes will be under there. Paddle in Fin, paddle, the letter N, and Fin.
Sweet.
So, awesome. There's shows for everybody. There's hunting segments, there's traveling, there's destination, there's bass fishing for noobs, there's tackle talk, gear reviews, and then there's an episode that does tournament breakdowns and all that kind of stuff. So we got some for everybody, and then we got a saltwater kayak segment version.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, dude, it's crazy even hear how much saltwater kayak fishing is blowing up. Just the access to the ability to have a vessel for yourself, like have a boat to get out there on the water, and then one thing that people struggle with kayaks here is like a lot of guys just launch them at the boat ramps. But I think when you get creative and find places, that are a little different to go launch, maybe not necessarily allowed, but getting creative with your boat launches, that's when it really kind of is such a huge, advantage to you to be able to sneak around.
That's the thing. We can't give the kayakers a bad name, but go ahead and pull off to the side and get your stuff ready. Get you a cart, a sea tug, or something to wheel it down through the ramp and then launch as quick as you can.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of my worst things, and that's my pet peeve, as being I got friends that have boats, and I fish out of boats a lot too, is seeing that person pull down through the ramp and then start offloading their stuff and then they're just blocking the ramp. It's just like, I don't do that.
No, that is a good point. But that's not what I was getting at.
But finding the out of the way spots, to launch and slide down in that area where you can go underneath the culvert and get into a back lake. Stuff like that is where it really shines.
Yeah.
And there's Google Earth and OnX are some stuff, some apps that you can look on and just find where you want to go. That's basically what it is. I know there's a lot of YouTubers out there that are blowing up a lot of spots, and it's starting to really get out of control. I might take some flack for that, but I'm not a big fan of the spot blowers.
No.
But the thing is, man, I don't want to spoon feed people.
Right.
I mean, I'm here to help. I love helping people, helping new anglers. But man, almost time on the water is what's going to get you results.
Yeah, you got to get out there.
Somebody can tell you I'm catching fish here, and you can go there and not set up the right way on that reef and not catch a fish.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a dangerous slope to start sliding on. Getting that kind of information for yourself, because at the end of the day, it just makes you like this greedy. It breeds this like kind of greedy angler that doesn't want to work for the knowledge. There's nothing wrong with shortening the learning curve, helping people, and teaching and building that community and the camaraderie and expressing the importance of conservation. But when you just hand somebody something that needs to be earned, that's when all of that goes through the window, and there's no desire to be a conservation-minded angler. You don't realize the importance and the effort it takes to actually accomplish the goal. When someone says, hey, here's a pin, boom, yeah, go check that out and fish it an hour before low tide. You go in there and it's like, there's nothing. The way I look at it too is like a lot of me and my buddies at this point now share information back and forth like that.
Yes.
But we're also already out there learning new, and like once you're sharing equal information back and forth with a buddy or a fishing partner, then that's okay. But when it's like the take, yeah, yeah, definitely, it's dangerous, man. Yeah. It is very dangerous. Yeah, I'll get on the grind like that sometimes in the summer, where I'm like one of my buddies will feed me 2 or 3 things, and then I just go beat that up for like a week, and then it's like, all right, what do I do now? These fish aren't here anymore. And even stuff I find, you got to keep the wheels turning. You got to keep checking stuff, and it's easy to get sucked into, especially guiding or trying to create content. Guys that are YouTubers trying to create content, to get sucked into the 100%. Instead of getting out there and working and failing and learning and all that.
Yes. I have a YouTube channel myself. I don't post like, the algorithms with all of that social media stuff. Just I don't have time to post a video every week, even if it's just a 3 to 5 minute video. I just don't have the time to do that. I would love to.
Right.
But yeah, when I have a couple good trips here and there and I filmed, I'll put a video out here and there. I got some, I worked as a chef at some point in my life, and I love food, so I have some pretty good catching cooks on there.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. I'll have to check that out.
I have some pretty good redfish videos from the fall. I have some footage of some trout, nothing giant, 27 and 3/4 and some 25s or something here and there, but nothing over 30 on video. I'm still waiting to break that mark myself. I've had a 29 and 3/4 and some 28 and a halves here and there, and like a bunch of fish over 27, but nothing over 30.
Yeah.
But yeah, spoon feeding. I don't know. I can't get behind that.
Yeah,
like you said, I love helping the learning curve out, and all that good stuff.
Definitely.
I'm all about that and the camaraderie and everything too. But it's just that spot burn, and it hits me pretty hard.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. It's got to be earned. Stuff's not respected until it's earned. I mean, you can look across any avenue or anything in the world. When someone's handed something, the respect for it is not there, and the value for it is not there. But well, let's talk a little bit. You were talking about some of your bigger trout. Let's kind of get into talking trout fishing for a little bit.
Yeah. Right.
So historically, when is kind of y'all's time of year that you want to, like, this is the time of year to go catch big fish?
I really like to target them this time of year. You do got the fish that move a little deeper here and there off of the structure and reefs. Yeah. And the bigger fish will come up on those days that warm up in the afternoons and stuff around the softer shell and mud bottoms and stuff. So I really like this time of year. I'm normally not chasing redfish this time of year. That's why I'm like, so I really like to focus this time of year. There's less boat traffic on the water normally. when it's colder.
Right.
You know, those dreary, you know, little bit more wind than you might want, and little drizzle and rain, and temperatures in the 50s, and you know, just get out there and use your slow twitch baits around some structure and stuff. And just some days you might just get 1 or 2 swipes, you know, but it could be that good fish, you know.
Heck yeah.
I'm not out looking for numbers this time of year. I'm out looking for the bigger fish for sure.
Right. Man, that's super fun. It's similar here. I mean, it starts to get a little colder, but November, December, great big trout times, and it'll start to get a little bit better as we get into March.
Yeah.
And February can be good too. We just need a couple warm days. Do y'all's fish transition, you know, from deep to cold, or from deep to shallow daily? Like, is that a thing that, like, as middle of the day they get up shallower, or is it more? They need more like a couple days.
It all depends on the, you know, cloud cover and water temps and stuff kind of play into that. You know, like this front, we just had a super cold and super strong wind, so that wind just helped whip all that cold air into the water and cool that water off really fast also. So, but yeah, on days that you know, you got some good sunlight in afternoons, and maybe that minor might line up at, you know, with the moonrise and sunset, and you know, the water temp could jump 2 or 3 degrees throughout the day, and those bigger fish will move up, you know, and be prowling the shallows, following the bait fish up there.
For sure.
Yeah, you know, normally this year, you know, this time of year, you know, as their metabolism slows down and everything, you know, I do like to upsize my baits a little bit here and there. You know, you know, I feel the bigger trout will definitely expend more energy on a larger mullet or something than over a bunch of, you know, small little glass minnows or something, or smaller bait fish than a bigger one. I feel they'd rather come on out and hit something that has a bigger profile and stuff. So I will, you know, adjust my baits and stuff this time of year, depending on, you know, sometimes the barometric pressure will play into it also. You know, you might have to downsize because of that higher pressure and everything, and they backed off a little bit. But yeah, there's you know, we do have some river estuaries in the area that the fish will move into on these colder snaps and stuff, and some deep holes in the rivers and everything that you'll see. But yeah, on the warmer days, I mean, if you get some good sunlight, and it heats up those shallow, you know, soft bottom areas with a little bit of mud and shell, they'll move on up sometimes, and you'll be able to focus on some big fish up there if you find them. You know, like most of the time the fish could be there, but it's not their time to eat. You know, it just has to line up when they want to eat. So like I said, you could be out there, you know, 3-4 hours and not even get a bite, and then it just turns on all of a sudden, just like, I mean, anywhere else it can get like that too. But I feel that this time of year you got to find you know, how they're going to set up on the structure, depending on if it's wind or tide driven current, and just being familiar with the areas of water that I'm fishing in also is you know, I'm on a kayak, and I run a 9-inch gray marine element.
Yeah.
HD with my side scan and down vision and everything.
So that's a pretty big part of your fishing.
Yes, especially this time of year. Like in the summer, you can go and spring, you know, water starts getting over 70. I'll throw top water a lot more and go target, you know, 2.5, 3 foot deep sand pockets and flats with the grass flats and everything along grass edges and stuff. But this time of year, I'm backing off 5, 7, 9 foot of water, finding some deep reef in the mid-bay reefs, some deep oyster shells and structure, and just trying to find the cutouts in the reef, the contours. And a lot of stuff is when we have lower tides, I really like to see the shape of the reef that I'm around sometimes. Like we'll have those big fronts blow in and blow the tide all out. We'll get negative tides and everything. And it'll be shallow in that area, but I'll just be mentally making notes of, you know, having marking waypoints on my graph where I see the cutouts in the reef and can set back up on there the next time I'm there when the water's higher, you know, so I can know those ambush points. Because I've had a lot of luck with my bigger fish is setting up in the spots to where they would ambush prey coming out, depending on the way the current is set up by tide or wind driven current. And it doesn't seem like it's just spotty. It seems like it's a pretty much a good pattern for the area I've been fishing a lot lately.
Okay.
up until before this front,
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about, not even a little bit, just explain to people, because I've heard a lot of the Texas guys call it spots or areas reefs, like that you're fishing a reef. But here, like a reef, if I said reef in North Carolina, people, or South Carolina, people would be like, oh, an artificial reef, like offshore for.
Oh, yeah.
So
oyster bars.
Oyster bars.
So, what you call them, oyster reefs.
Yeah, the oyster reefs.
Yeah. Or a spoil bank from sediment that was used when they're dredging, like our intercoastal canals or canals that connect to little harbors and stuff. And then we do have some industrial harbor areas that have, 14, 15 foot deep water with little 3 and 4 foot deep shelves that drop off the edge. And I'll go target those edges with slow sinking twitch baits and count them down, or fish a little heavier jig head and get them down on the bottom. Ned rigs, same thing. Yeah. Depends on if you need to downsize some on those high barometric pressure days. Those bluebirds guys and stuff, sometimes they're a little softer bite. They might want something a little smaller. It looks like a little sand eel or something, So, that plays into it a little bit. But yeah, like you said, is oyster reefs is what I'm talking about. We have a lot of oyster. They oyster our bays around here: San Antonio Bay, Lavaca Bay, Matagorda Bay, and all that. There's oyster and boats everywhere. But when weather allows and I can get out on some of those deeper water oyster reefs, it's a that side scan does come in handy on those.
Man, side scan is crazy.
It's great.
Have you seen the new?
A lot more opportunities. Yeah.
Have you seen the new active target and the forward facing sonar that guys are running in the bass world now?
Yeah, the live scope,
and all the
360 view and all. Yeah, there's actually brackets for the kayaks now.
Are there?
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
A lot of the guys in the bass side of things are starting to transition over in those. It's like video game fishing. It's the same thing with the side scan and the down vision.
Right.
When you use a drop shot and kind of get on top of them and just, or you're doing a big slab spoon and jigging up in the schools and stuff. I'll use it like that too. And in some of our, like I said, we have some river estuaries that they'll back up to in the winter this time of year. And there's some, 25, 30 foot deep holes. Sometimes you'll find them just stacked in there. We do have some reservoirs that will release water depending on what their levels are with rainfall and stuff. So you'll see like you'll see it set up, and you'll see the fresh water on top, and the fish will be underneath it, and you'll be catching trout, and it'll be sweet as hell. Be really sweet on top.
Yeah.
And you'll still ripping them there.
That's cool.
You can usually stack up on them pretty good, but usually when you're doing that, you're just going to catch a few for dinner or something. I catch some decent fish in the rivers this time of year, but nothing like when I'm out in, down around Port Mansfield or that areas further south, trying to chase that big bite.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of big, you always hear of Corky when you talk to people from Texas, and before the show, you were talking about how you do like to fish Corky, but you were kind of sharing some other baits with me that you've transitioned over from the bass world. Go and kind of share those with some of our listeners and explain how you fish them, why you like them, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I love the Corkies. Like you said, I throw the fat boys, and I thought Steve Brown actually makes the jointed. Yeah,
those are sweet. I got a couple of those.
These are pretty sick. The custom jointed, and then the soft iron XLs. This is some custom colors from.
Yeah, that's a good looking color. Who makes that one?
Colors. Coastal Marsh paints these.
Okay.
He does some good stuff. He's got some fat boys in this color and stuff, and then another. You can't beat these right here this time of year.
No.
If you're patient, there's really no wrong way to work them. You
that's the age-old question: is how to work
reel down. And, I work them fast, like super fast, like walking a dog under the water subsurface. And there's floating versions also. But I transition a lot of stuff from bass fishing even to redfish also. But on the trout side of thing, I've had good results with bigger swim baits, bigger paddle tails from the bass side, and luckily this company here, MC Swimmer, I'm not sponsored by them or anything. But I found this pumpkin seed chartreuse tail one that has been insane.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's the size on that? How long is it?
That one's about 6 inches long.
6 inches, okay.
Yeah, I run an 8-aught EWG with a 1/4 ounce keel weight on that.
Just a twist lock on the front to get the.
Yeah, just a twist lock. Yeah, yes, sir. And these have been pretty pretty good to me on the deeper oyster reefs.
Yeah.
5, 7, 8 foot of water, and slow rolling these down around the ambush points and getting some pretty good sized fish to eat them.
Yeah.
And then I also transition on some of the shallower stuff. I use glide baits that kind of resemble a mullet,
Yeah, heck yeah.
Jointed glide baits. You just kind of twitch and reel and twitch and reel. This is the 4-play Savage Gear, 4-play V2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a pretty good one too. Also, 6 Cents make a couple good glide baits.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
Have you fished any wake baits?
I do fish wake baits.
Yeah.
More in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
A
little
water
too.
starts warming up, 65 to 70. I'll throw the Strike Pro Hunchbacks are pretty good. My buddy that paints some custom top waters for me, he paints some great looking little wake baits, and they're one knocker too. They got a knock in them that's really good. But he paints a lot of my top waters that I throw in the spring. Salty Plugger, he's a Chris Dodd. He's a good friend of mine that paints some great top waters for me that I like to throw.
Those are killer.
In the spring as it warms up, and these have the one knocker in the tail and 4 BBs in the head, so they got a good little tone to them.
Yeah,
they're like called a snake head. They got kind of a weird shaped head to them, but it's bone and orange. That's been money color too. But I like the bigger profile baits. This time of year, trying to draw that big bite, man. That's what it's all about to me. But when you got to downsize, there's always. I'm sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good.
Oh, my phone was off.
It's downsizing, man.
And there's this airtail shad this grande. This is they support me, big sponsor of mine on the bass side. I cashed quite a few checks on the bass side with a lot of their baits, and they transitioned over to the saltwater side, and I got brought on with them to help with their colors and stuff. And this is an airtail shad, and what this bait is, it's almost like a fluke with a hollow tail.
Oh wow, that thing's sweet.
It holds a rattle
in the tail.
There's a rattle in the tail. Yes, sir.
That is pretty sweet.
So you use a small screw lock. This one's a 1/8 ounce or a 16th ounce, and this is it's got a nice little enticing dance and zigzag in the water.
Yeah.
We got some great colors on this one. This one's a good lure in the 3 to 5 foot range around that shell and then the grass and stuff when they start transitioning up to the shoreline as it warms up. On those flats during the day, sometimes if they move up, this is a great one to throw. A little bone and silver. There's you name it, they probably got it. But yeah, I love those too. This time of year that they can, it gives it a slow fall. It kind of gives it a neutral buoyancy with a little lighter weight, so it looks more natural.
Yeah.
So I like some natural looking baits. Sometimes the crazy colors though, or for some reason you're like, gosh, why is a trout? There's no pink freaking.
I know, and this thing's bright pink
out there. Why is that thing bubblegum pink and it's getting smoked?
I know, man. They're fun. Trout are so funny. I always tell people like redfish, they really don't care about color. It's more presentation. Trout care about presentation, but they also can really care. Like some days they don't give a rip about color. Other days it's like you have to be throwing this color, this size, to get eaten. And it's funny you're talking about fishing these larger swim baits and larger profile baits for bigger bites. And yeah, I agree, definitely, 100%. It does, draw bigger bites and typically, lessen your small fish bites. But it's crazy how little of a fish will sometimes eat a freaking 7-inch swim bait. You'll get like a 12-inch fish smoke a 7-inch like diesel minnow. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I'll throw the Magnum flukes. They're like 10 inches.
Yeah.
Like the white ice color.
Yeah.
Bubblegum pink. Those I'll throw those on like an 8 or 10 off, weightless hook on the flats, and I've caught some decent trout doing that myself. But yeah, just like you said, you'd be surprised as how those 12, 14-inch fish will smoke something just as big as them. But
for sure,
it goes to show you that they're cannibalistic. The main thing is about them is they're opportunistic feeders. The trout will most of the time, if it's near it, it's going and it's hungry, it's going to eat it.
Yeah.
So any opportunity it has to feed and set up the ambush stuff, it does.
Definitely. Yes. Sure. Trout are just such a fun fish. I think what it is there's just so much to put together and figure out about them. Redfish, it's pretty, cut and dry. You know, like if you see a redfish, he's typically going to eat, and you can kind of throw whatever you want to him, and it's cool. It's visual. You know, it's a fun way to fish. But the trout will freaking kick your butt some days, which is what's fun about it. Like when you think you got it figured out, you know that
they moved and they're gone, and the hard heads move in the Gafftop.
Yeah, exactly. Thankfully, we don't have to deal with Gafftops up here. Man,
they'll smoke a topwater over here, and you'll think you got a 5-pound trout on it.
Really?
And you see all that slime coming, and you're like, oh man. It's like, yep, they were here yesterday. They moved a little bit, so yeah, we deal with that too. But yeah, they'll smoke artificials like crazy.
That's crazy. We'd catch them quite often in Louisiana, like fishing popping corks or whatnot for redfish. I heard a story though. This was in Florida from a buddy in Florida that there was like that you can actually eat. This sounds crazy. You can eat or like eat the slime, and it's like a psychedelic,
hallucinogenic.
Yeah, is that real?
Supposedly so. It's like licking a toad or something.
Yeah, for sure.
No.
There was somebody that told me like there was like these kids that were like in southern like in the Miami area that were like harvesting that and selling it as like a psychedelic. The slime off of the Gafftop catfish.
Yeah, I hate dealing with it. I don't catch them that often, but when you do, it's just like, oh man, But people actually eat them.
I've heard they're pretty good to eat.
You could go and it's just they're a pain to clean. I'm sure, but you could go skin one and fry it up along with some other fish, and probably people wouldn't even know the difference.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like they eat. You know, quality. They have a quality food source as far as eating like a trout or redfish. So,
yes, they do.
That's cool. So, who makes this massive fluke you're talking about? I've never even. Do you have one laying around?
Zoom. I do not have it. So Zoom makes the Magnum fluke. They're 8 and 10 inch flukes. Yes.
Wow. How like tall? How
they're not super tall. They're 1.5 inches, 2 inches on the bigger where the bottom of the EWG hook will go up in the little pocket there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they make some good ones. They work pretty good, like nose hooking them sometimes too. But when you have a lot of grass, like fishing those around like the sand pockets and stuff in the grass flats here, you need a weedless presentation most of the time. So a lot of times I'll go to that when, like say in the spring and the water warms up and stuff. You'll get that floating grass and stuff, and you can't really work a top water as much. So I'll go to like a weightless fluker or something like that. I know that one, the one lure that's kind of the same. It's a little smaller, is from Trout Support. He has some stuff like that casts really well, and it's a weedless presentation like a fluke, kind of almost similar to this, maybe a little stubbier. Yeah, but yeah, this works great in the grass also.
I'll have to get you to send some of like your buddy who paints the plugs, and then that company.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you some.
Well, no, just send me the website so that I can tag one here.
I'm gonna send you a package.
Well, send me a package for sure. But I think a lot of listeners will want to buy especially that soft plastic with the rattle, because no one's fishing that up here. I think that'd be
those are pretty cool. And then we have I'll use these a lot too for the trout. When you want to go grab a limit on a popping cork or something, but they make the shrimp that it's like a dual paddle tail on the shrimp.
Oh, sweet.
That's the kicking shrimp from the Grande.
I knew as soon as I saw that, I knew it was gonna have kicking in the name somewhere. With those two little
little paddle tails on the back.
Little paddle tails.
I think the original mold was called the wave shrimp back in the day. He's lucky enough to get some of the molds. He does do the big curly tail grubs also in great colors. Y'all check him out. We just started the saltwater stuff this year, really hitting it hard. He'll have some topwater stuff coming out too.
Okay.
That's Grande Salt.
Grande
Saltwater. Yep. I'll send you the links and stuff over for that.
Cool. Yeah, we'll throw that up.
He's a good dude. Just out of Texas, Dripping Springs. He makes some great bass lures too. I uses his crawfish imitations. He's done some saltwater colors for that, and I use that a lot for pitching to my redfish sight fishing.
Okay. Yeah, that's one thing that I've really gotten turned on to the past couple of years is fishing those creature baits for redfish. That little bit of movement and fishing them on like a football jig or something that stands them up a little bit. That how a bass wants to eat a crayfish. It transitions so well for redfish.
It does. It looks like a crab.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking across the bottom, also, it's just tough to beat them sometimes when the fish are keyed in with their nose down and stuff, and they don't want to have nothing to do with a subsurface lure or nothing. They want something on the bottom right there. puffing up the mud and scurrying around. Getting off on the redfish, but yeah, it's all good.
Hey,
I love catching them too. Certain times of year, we have our great times over here in the fall. It really turns on. Right now they're in the deeper, channels and bayous themselves too, trying to stay warm in that, warmer water, deeper water.
Right.
So
it seems like they can handle the cold a little better.
They handle it down. Probably the water temp gets around 38, and they start having more issues. Trout, you start getting below. Over here, you start seeing it below 45 for an extended period. You better start worrying. You better hope they're getting to deep water, say like the Intracoastal Waterway or anything like that. Being those are, it's not super deep, but it's definitely a refuge for them. So we started seeing some voluntary barge shutdowns where some of the operators were shutting down some of the barge traffic because all of the fish were congregating in the deeper water. So you didn't want to go through and stir them all up, and after they're already stunned, they end up floating all over the place. I'm really hoping for the best from all this. It'll be tough to see a lot of dead fish floating, a lot of big fish floating.
It's cool though to see where your state is, where Texas is. Like the fact that they're shutting down the barge traffic and taking these precautions. My buddy Wyatt, who I can't remember where he lives, but
he just moved to Corpus.
Yeah, he just to Corpus.
I need to reach out to him because he's caught some good fish lately too down in Lower Loop.
He's a good dude, man. Y'all will like each other. He kayak fishes as well. But I was like, man, why don't you go? He's like, there's dead fish floating up everywhere down here. And I was like, you should go scoop them up so you can, they're dead. Go fillet them up and freeze them and do something. He's like, you can't. It's illegal. And then he started to explain it, and it makes sense, and I'm like, North Carolina would be like a madhouse of guys running around on their John boats, scooping up fish and taking them to the fish market trying to sell them.
We had some major freezes in the mid 83 and then 89. We had a couple back-to-back ones, and those were really devastating fish kills. And people were lined up with just like treble hooks snagging all the stunned fish in the Port Mansfield Harbor back in the day. I wasn't here then, but I heard some horror stories about it. And, and that's where it kind of led to, just certain areas are closed when it is below freezing for multiple days, like the harbors and the industrial areas and the deeper channels, canals, and the neighborhood canals that are deeper. They shut it down to fishing. They do. The Texas Parks and Wildlife does a good job of that stuff. Just so you're not out there taking advantage of the fish that are all basically like fishing in a barrel. There's no sport in that. There's no sport in that at all.
No.
That's so. I'd rather see the fishery preserved than anything else.
Maybe you don't get to go fish or guide for a couple of days, but it's for the longevity of the resource, which is really the most important factor.
And that's what's cool about Texas is we do have some great fisheries management and hatcheries here that they will be able to, aid in the recovery via the fingerlings and stuff. At the hatcheries, redfish and trout included. Trout are a little harder. But they'll definitely do what they can to bring the fishery back.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping it's not a big, super devastating blow. I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of fishing guys like yourself here that depend on the fishery here also for their livelihood. We don't have the commercial side of things as far as the trout and the redfish goes. I think maybe the East Coast still has some places that take trout and redfish in the commercial side. But they don't commercial fish those here. There's commercial flounder fishermen that go and gig them and stuff like that. People that run line for a drum. But as far as trout and redfish, that's not part of the commercial industry here. And that's just the main livelihood for a lot of guides. That are going to depend on that. And I've already seen a lot of chatter online about most of them wanting to enforce catch and release on their trips coming up.
Yeah,
they have trips coming up this year. To really push that, catch and release, which has been a great thing that started on the East Coast with the Release Over 20 initiative that was started. And I've been trying to push that myself. And you sometimes you get some flack over here. People are like, well, by law I can keep 1 over 25, and I can have 15 to 24-inch fish. 5 of them, I can keep whatever I want. It's like, well, I mean, just think about the resource. Think about those those bigger fish reproducing and helping helping our fisheries out, and that's just, I'm glad that initiative's getting a little boost here lately. It's definitely, picking up some steam over here also.
And think about it too.
Mind people.
Like a 24-inch fish as opposed to an 18-inch fish, by the time you fillet that out and cook it, it is like one more cut with a fork. One more cut with a fork and a small bite, and that's all it is, And so at that point, people are really killing those fish for the picture. They're killing them to do their dock shot and their hero shot.
Hero shots. Yep.
But man,
you can still get that hero shot on the water.
That's what I'm saying.
Get that swim away footage.
Get you that iPhone with the new wide angle lens, man. You can make that 24 look like a 27.
Make it look good.
Exactly. Oh man,
no doubt, man.
One other thing I want to talk about, we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but kind of share with people. This is something I'm always trying to push on here because personally, it's where I do most of my learning. Is through watching bass fishing content on YouTube and tactical bassing and freshwater lure stuff. But being an avid bass angler like you are, as well as an avid freshwater angler, what kind of advantages, where do you see that really advantage you or give you advantage? I can't speak today. In the saltwater world.
Man, bass are finicky.
Yeah.
And it just helps you focus that much more on choosing the right presentation and the right way to target that fish. Their tendencies are very similar to a redfish to me.
Yeah.
And so that's why, a lot of the lures cross over into the saltwater side. You would never think, oh man, I'm not going to catch redfish on that little 2-inch crankbait. No, my last trip to Gulf Shores, Alabama, I caught 6 redfish over 30 inches off a 2-inch river to sea square bill crankbait.
That's square bill, man.
The Bon Secours River, fishing tide bar, little sandbar depth changes from like 3 to 6 foot. I caught one that's 47 inches. It was, that's on a 6'9", medium, extra fast with a little team lose light with 20-pound braid.
That's awesome. That square bill, though,
really fun.
On aggressive redfish, that's the first time I ever threw a square bill for redfish was last year. And granted, one thing you do have to do throwing a lot of the square bill baits for redfish is check your hooks, because a lot of those light wire hooks,
you got to change them, upgrade them.
Upgrade them to a little bit heavier gauge. But man, it's such a perfect redfish bait. And fishing around oyster, you snag the bottom, you let it float up, wiggle a little bit, it floats up, man. And typically you need to fish it on a little bit more of an aggressive bite. Like if the fish are a little lethargic, it's a little too much for them. But that like morning, low tide or mid tide kind of thing in the summer, man, they will smoke that thing.
Oh, they'll smoke it, and that's the thing. It's a great search bait.
Yeah.
So if you know the fish are in the area and you're coming up to an area and you want to just fan cast to see where them fish are setting up, on those depth changes, it's a really good bait, and so is a chatterbait around structure and grass, the shallow grass and salt grass lines, cord grass. Ripping a chatterbait down around there is the same thing. I mean, it just looks like it gets that little wobble, looks like a little fleeing bait fish, and they smoke it just like they would a redfish magic spinner bait or the Z-Man diesel spinner bait with a jig head with a little soft plastic little paddle tail on it.
The bites are usually gnarly too.
They knock slack in the line, they'll rip the rod out of your hand, and it's the same thing. It's just seeing that, just transitioning that stuff over and seeing what it's done for adding more baits to my arsenal. When the redfish, you got the flood tides and they're pushed way back in the grass. I find myself throwing a lot of soft-bodied, hollow-bodied frogs.
Yeah.
Or zoom ribbit frogs.
The ribbit frogs, killer.
The top. The KVD poppin' perch. They make one that's a bone colored with an orange throat with pink on it. They absolutely love that one over here, and then the white one, the ghost white. They actually love those over here. They just demolish them when they're in the grass. Okay. And same thing with the weightless flukes up in the grass. It just kind of transitioned from the bass side. Actually, spinner baits, with the skirt on them and everything, and throw a paddle tail on them. a lot of that has transitioned over to our flats when we're sight fishing redfish and stuff over here also.
Yeah.
And as we talked about earlier, the crawfish imitation baits are a big plus also. But yeah, just it definitely opens your eyes, to having more baits in your arsenal to fool those fish, because remember, we're fooling those fish with some plastic,
right.
Which is pretty cool.
It is cool
in its own right. So,
that is super cool.
It does help you out, like you said, being fishing for bass. Also, the way the fish it's more redfish that are kind of remind me of the bass, the way they eat and everything. So, but the trout, you definitely with the chatterbait, man, they come up and smoke it on the sand pocket. So it's definitely something to have that extra piece of gear in your arsenal for sure.
Okay, yeah, that's super cool. Well, man, we're at an hour. I think you guys, if you are listening and we're gonna slide over here on Patreon and continue recording some extra content on Patreon for y'all. But before we get off of the podcast, is there anything else? And by the way, this will be podcast episode 101. So
Whoa.
I'm doing a live stream. I'm doing a live stream next week. That's gonna go up for next week, and then this will go up the following week. But 101, man. Thanks for doing it with me. It means we got to go to 200 now because we've broken 100. And so it's been a fun run, man. I've enjoyed it. But is there anything else that you want to touch on, here on the public version of the podcast before we move over to Patreon? If not, no worries at all. But if there is.
Yeah, just everybody keep in mind that Release Over 20 initiative.
Yeah.
Please do your part for our fisheries and for our kids and their kids and grandkids in the future here to have the same resource we have. I'm all about all of that. So, and just thanks to everybody that reads the articles and supports me in this industry. I appreciate the support from everybody and all the sponsors that support me for sure. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dustin, man. That was an awesome podcast, guys. Thanks so much for I cannot talk today. Thanks so much for tuning in. We've had a great show here today. Like I said, we're sliding over on Patreon. We're going to record some extra content for y'all. Thank you so much to the Patreon supporters. And if you want some more content or want to help support, just slide on over there. $5 a month, super easy and super helpful. But guys, we will see y'all we'll see y'all next week. But I keep thinking that this is going up before the live stream, but it's not. So hope y'all enjoyed the live stream. Hope y'all enjoyed this podcast. We'll see y'all next week. Later.